Welcome to Nerd Narrates, where I pick the best stories from the internet and share them with you. Let's begin the video. So, for a little backstory, I, F27, met my husband M27 in 2017 when we both were working. My husband worked as an IT specialist, and I worked as a teacher at the local elementary school. Things were fairly normal throughout our relationship. We had been dating for a couple of years before I got pregnant with our son. This is when we decided to move in together, get engaged, and have a courthouse wedding with the people close to our hearts. My husband and MIL were adamant that we buy a house closer to my in-laws' house from the get-go. This should have been a red flag itself, but I was convinced of this under the pretext of family living closer to each other, which at that time felt like the right thing to do. Problems arose when we tried to find a place at their locality, but as they lived in a high-end neighborhood, none of those houses fit in our budget. My MIL went to the great lengths of offering us to pay for the down payment of the house, which I denied as I wanted to own the house I lived in and continued my search until I found a house that fit our budget and was close to my in-laws' house. Offering to pay the down payment was nothing for my MIL, as both of us came from a well-off family. However, the difference was the fact that I was made to work hard for what I had, and my husband was handed everything that he needed within the snap of a finger. So it wasn't surprising that when we moved in, he had a hard time contributing to family chores. I did not mind taking over at that time, as I was on a break from work as my husband was earning fairly well. However, my MIL would constantly make reasons to visit us, call us, or do anything to bother. Being a couple who had moved in together, this obviously bothered us. Every time my husband ignored her calls, she would blow up my phone, claiming that I stole her boy away from her. I was able to ignore most of it throughout our relationship, through my engagement and initial years of wedding, until the virus hit and the country shut down. I started to observe small patterns of behavior in my husband that started to ick me. He started treating the lockdown as a vacation of some sorts. He would not contribute to the household, pick up after himself, and so much more. In a nutshell, he had stopped looking after himself, his work, and the house. Now, if we were a couple with no children, I wouldn't have a problem taking over the household chores, but it is needless to say that the workload had increased 10 times ever since I had returned to work, and my son had grown to an age where he needed to be looked after every moment. I had tried multiple times to sit my husband down and explain the situation to him, and every single time he involved my MIL into it, who would, of course, take her precious son's side, claiming how the situation has taken a toll on him and how I shouldn't need help for something I'm supposed to do. Things got worse in between all of this as my husband lost his job. I saw this coming as he had completely stopped putting effort into his job, taking multiple leaves, and not being able to reach his work deadlines, even though that's all the responsibility he had to take care of. But hey, guess what? This was once again blamed onto me, as I was the reason why he lost his job. MIL claimed it was because of all the stress I caused him that made him lose motivation from his job. At that time, I was so mentally exhausted that I let myself believe that I had indeed played a part in my husband losing his job, which I tried to compensate for by taking over the entire household load on myself, all the while taking over the finances too. This went on until the restrictions eased and school started reopening. I was asked to join my work again, which I was very happy to do, as that would mean I would not have to see much of my husband. I figured my husband could at least take care of our son as I worked, or ask MIL to come over, but oh boy, I was proven wrong. I asked my husband if we could sit down and have a conversation, which he refused, claiming that he was in the middle of something important and that I had to talk to him while he was gaming. I had no choice but to explain myself, so I did. I told him how I needed to rejoin work the coming Monday and how I would need him to take care of our son. He simply nodded his head as he was too engrossed in playing games, and I thought that was it. Sunday came, and I explained to my husband everything that needed to be taken care of. This made my husband mad, as he told me that this was way too much work for him. According to him, he only said yes because he thought that the work would be less and only for a couple of hours. I asked him if he could ask MIL, as my parents lived a couple of hours away and there was no way I could travel back and forth for hours to pick up and drop off my son. He said that it isn't his concern and that I need to hire a nanny. This shocked me, as my husband would usually play with our son and spend time with him. I decided to call my MIL to see if she'd be willing to take over babysitting, but she refused as well, telling me that it was my duty as a mother and a wife to organize childcare. Not only that, she also reminded me that I needed to take care of my husband and stop bugging him to babysit our son because he's already tired of dealing with me bugging him all the time. This made me blow up at her. I told her that the only reason why her son is overwhelmed is because she had cooked him like a baby and was not allowed to let him grow as a man. I hung up instantly after saying that, and currently feel guilty because I know I shouldn't have blown up at her. I'm very overwhelmed as I'm typing this. There's no way that I can afford a nanny with one income, and I feel like I have no one's support. I haven't told my family anything yet because my grandfather has fallen ill, and everyone has been busy taking care of him. I don't want to add to their stress. AITA for refusing to hire a nanny and telling my jobless husband to take care of our son even though he's stressed. Update 1. I saw that this post has blown up, and I want to thank every single one of you for your kind comments and even offering to help. I have fortunately found a very kind friend of mine willing to help me with babysitting, as she works from home until I figure out alternative childcare. I have read all your comments, and it has opened my eyes to all how poorly I'd been getting treated by my husband and MIL. I've realized that I do not deserve to be treated as a free housemaid simply because my husband refuses to get his act together and learn to be an adult instead of running to his mom every minor inconvenience that occurs. I've contacted my family and explained the situation. They were in shock and offered me to move in with them, as they have 2 spare rooms in their house that would accommodate me and my son until I can figure out a plan. I packed up a bag with clothes that would last us for a couple of days and left with my son the next morning. My husband did not see us leave, as he didn't wake up until much later. It felt nice to be treated with respect and kindness by my parents, and to know that someone has my back. My husband has started blowing up my phone along with my MIL by the time it was night, because I guess he figured that I wasn't coming home. I did not answer any of his calls except for one, and told him that I was no longer interested to talk to him. I've started to divorce lawyers to begin divorce proceedings, and my brother suggested that I meet his friend, who is a lawyer, and he said could get me an appointment instantly, to which I agreed. The next day I went to the appointment with my brother. The lawyer was very helpful and patient and explained all the alternatives and options I had. He suggested that I shouldn't move out of my house until the divorce is finalized, and that's what I'm planning on doing for now. I'll update more whenever I can. Thank you so much. Update 2. I returned home today with my son and found my house cleaner than ever. The dishes had been washed, the floor had been swept, and the kitchen was filled with groceries. I was shocked at this change, but also on high alert, as I knew this was just my husband trying to show that he has changed all of a sudden after years of being like this. I decided to sit my husband down and have a conversation. He initiated the conversation by telling me how much he appreciated and how cleaning the house today made him realize that poorly he had treated me. I know he was just telling me what I wanted to hear, so I just responded to him in short one-worded answers. I wanted to talk to him about the divorce and how I wanted full custody of our son, but even before I started talking, I saw MIL walk out of our shared bedroom with cleaning supplies. There was an expression of shock on both of our faces as we looked at each other. I figured she wanted to clean the house up and make it seem like my husband had. Both of their faces turned red as their plans had failed terribly. I instantly got up and told MIL to leave the house along with my husband. My MIL tried to argue with me as I revealed the plans I had about the divorce to the both of them. I went on to say that this was exactly the reason why I was going to divorce my husband and that he can go play happy family with MIL. My anger was through the roof at that point, and I think this was enough for MIL and husband to leave the house. I'm still quite shaken up by the situation and writing this to get my thoughts in order. I know this is not the end of the story, and it's going to be quite difficult to divorce my husband, but I'm ready to go through the process if that means my son and I get to live a better life. I once again thank you all for your amazing support. NTA. Kick your husband to the curb. Tell him to go live with his mom. OP. You're not living with an adult, but with a grown man with the mentality of a teenager. This man does not want a wife but a maid. The fact that the MIL and the husband were so adamant on living closer to each other should have been the basis of a divorce itself. Good luck with the divorce, OP. Unfortunately, OP, you've tied a knot with someone who's a child himself. The husband is terribly entitled, childish, and needs to go back to living with his mom, who is so interested in his marriage. I can only imagine what OP must have had to go through spending her lockdown with MIL and husband, who probably brainwashed her into believing everything was her fault. NTA for asking your husband for help. This is the bare minimum you can do as a parent. OP, file for a divorce and kick the husband out of the house. Next story. She's the one who isn't letting me see him actually. My brother is 5 and I, 25M, love him. We were close ever since he was a newborn. Stepmom got all petty because of my son's mom, 27F. She's the daughter of one of my stepmom's cousins. I didn't know her that well, but we met after my dad married my stepmom. We hooked up a few times, then she got pregnant with our son who's 2 months old. I found out she was separated from her husband, but they decided to work things out. Neither want me in my son's life, since it complicates things for them trying to fix their marriage. It's a major shit show, but all I'm trying to do is be in my son's life. Right now, we're in the middle of a fight in court, trying to establish that I'm his father, and getting a custody arrangement which they're pushing back on. My stepmom decided to take her side by not letting me come to their house. Not even to see my brother or my dad. I love my dad, but he's soft when it comes to her, as in he'd rather meet with me in secret than confront her. It's been this way for months, before my son was even born, because she doesn't appreciate me trying to complicate a member of her family's marriage by wanting to be involved with the baby. No one in my family knows about this. Well, they know about my son / the custody, but not what my stepmom is doing. Only my mom, but she wasn't there the day this happened. It was my brother's birthday recently and they had a party. At my uncle's barbecue, everyone was asking why I didn't come over for his birthday because my brother was sad about it. They had asked my dad and stepmom, but all they told them was I didn't give them a reason when telling them I'm not going. Firstly, they didn't even tell me they had a party for him, so that's exactly what I said to them. And everything about her not letting me come over to see him or my dad because of what's going on, my dad not standing up to her, my grandma was angry, everyone was. She was humiliated because they all call her a heartless bee. My uncle was drunk for punishing my little brother over a separate issue. While my family supports me, they did come down on her hard, and she's extremely pissed about it. Now she won't stop saying what an effing prick I am trying to ruin her relationship with my family in retaliation for wanting to support her family. It wasn't necessarily in retaliation, but saying the truth, since they try to make it look like I just didn't want to go or something. AITA? NTA, you just told the truth. She's just pissed she got caught in her lie and isn't mature enough to take responsibility for her own actions. Really, lies like this always get exposed. It's just a question of sooner or later. It certainly isn't in your interest to keep it quiet, and you have no motivation to look out for hers. NTA, you told the truth without being rude. Everyone else in the family was mad about being lied to. That's not your fault. As a guideline, remember, your stepmother should remember that if the truth bothers you, it might be time to re-examine your priorities. Next story. My 18F father, 43M, and his partner, 40F, have just had their first baby together, my half-sister. My dad's partner has been on the scene since I was 2. My dad cheated on my mom with his now partner and then left my mom for her. His partner has always given me a bit of a hard time, saying mean things and pretending that they're jokes, particularly when my dad isn't there. For example, I always make her and my dad a coffee in the mornings when I stay with them, and she'll say to people while I'm standing right there how bad I am at making coffee, or joke that her 10-year-old niece is better at it than me, that sort of thing. Anyway, I used to stay at their house one night a week, but a couple of years ago they moved 3 hours away from where I live with my mom and go to school/uni, etc. I've been really excited about the baby. I went and stayed with my dad while his partner and the baby were still in the hospital after the birth. I did a grocery shop and tried to get the house nice before they came home. My dad has MH issues and is pretty useless at anything like that. Given they live too far for me to drop in regularly, I was planning to stay for a week once partner and baby come home. I took time off from my part-time job, etc. I figured I could cook and do homework and run errands for them and stuff, so my dad and his partner could focus on bonding with the baby. Anyway, on the day his partner and the baby are meant to come home, my dad tells me that they want it to be just family. In other words, my dad, his partner, and the baby, and that I need to go home. Now I'm like 99% sure this is coming from his partner. I don't think my dad would care if I was there. I lost my crap, crying and yelling at my dad, and asked my dad that if this had happened a year ago, and he'd somehow had full custody of me at the time, if he would have just turned me out to make room for the baby. He said of course not, and backtracked pretty quick and said that I could stay, but I was really upset by then, and I said no. I went into my room and stayed there, even after the baby and partner came home in the Arvo, and then I left first thing the next morning. My dad and his partner are both pissed off at me for trying to throw a tantrum and leaving and making it about me when they're trying to focus on the new baby. I was upset and told my friend's mom about it, and she said I was being an AH to make such a big deal over it, as I'm technically an adult. I'm nearly 19, and it's fair enough that my dad's partner just wanted to be with him and the baby. The whole thing has made me feel like shit. AITA? ETA. Me being there was planned ages in advance. It was my idea, but they agreed to it and knew I had to get time off the restaurant where I work, etc. Then they changed their minds and said they wanted it to be family. Also, I lost at my dad before his partner and baby came home. It was just the two of us at the house. I wouldn't yell if a newborn and someone who'd just given birth was there. I stayed out of their way once they came home and then left first thing the next day. NTA. What is with these replies? In what world is it okay to kick an older child out to make room for a new child? I doubt any of you are kicking out your other children for weeks when you have a new baby. If you're a step-parent, it means you have to accept your partner's children into your life as their children, not a guest that you can get rid of whenever you want.